Welcome to SF Nonprofit Spotlight, brought to you by SF Commons. I'm Kelly Daly. What does breaking the glass ceiling sound like? Well, we're about to talk to an organization that works to end the gender imbalance in the recording arts. Women's Audio Mission, also known as WAM, has been in San Francisco since 2003. And joining me today is its managing director, Elena Botkin-Levy. Elena, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly.
Thank you. Your background is in producing radio and oral histories and multimedia education. Maybe can you kind of set the scene by telling me about your career and how the gender imbalance really has shown up, how sound equity is a need?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, WAM is a dream because it really brings together all of the different avenues and career paths that I've been on. So, as you said, my background is in audio education, education in general, radio production, oral history, and storytelling. And WAM really exists because some of the things that you named at the beginning, we really see this critical need in this industry because it's less than 5% of the people that are making all of the sounds that we consume every day are women or gender expansive folks. And for us, that's a real problem. That's an issue. And so when we think about these industries of music production and recording arts and digital technologies, really our mission is around changing the face of sound and saying, what do we need to do to get more women, girls, and gender expansive folks at the table in those industries, not just singing or in front of a microphone, but behind a console, in the studio, in the production space. So that's what we're all about, is really that work. And it's exciting because we get to do it in all these different levels, both with a studio and through our education programs and internships. So it's exciting and feels like really valuable and important work.
It sounds like very valuable work. And just to maybe set the stage even more to understand the problem, what do you think some of the biggest obstacles are to sound equity?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we talk about is how there's been this decline in women and girls enrolling in college STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math, since the year 2000. So it's 70% decline there. And so for us, that's a real issue. And so part of what we focus on and really have some intention around is that education space. And so that's why we have our Girls on the Mic programs that's focused on working with middle and high school girls, exposing them to different career pathways and all of the different exciting avenues they can have in sound, to our adult education programs and our internships, and then the conferences where we bring together folks around the country. So really focusing on that educational space to make those shifts and changes and to change those statistics is really what we focus on. And then we have our studio, which is this incredible space, and it's the only one in the world built and run entirely by women and gender expansive folks. And we're really proud of that. And so those are the real highlights of our work.
It's really interesting that you bring up STEM and the recording arts. Can maybe you break it down for English majors and journalism majors, just how that has an affiliation?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we focus on in our Girls on the Mic classes is really breaking down these career pathways because there's so many unknown paths. So for example, a lot of them say, "Ooh, coding, that's scary. That's not for me. I'm interested in music." And so what we get to do is say, "Hey, you can code for sound." And then they're like, "Oh, cool. I want to do that. And look, I can do it." And so that's the kind of thing that we're really interested in doing, is making those connections and opening up the doors and the possibilities for young people through adults.
Yeah, the idea of making synthesizers or sound speakers, that it takes some knowledge of STEM is what I'm understanding.
Absolutely. In our level 1 class is the foundational program that we have for our adult ed program. And actually, if folks are interested, enrollment is coming up for mid-February for that class. And one of the modules is soldering. So learning how to solder cables. And so getting out the wire and doing all of that. And so, both on the really fundamental technical side, all the way to thinking about how are we coding and programming and sitting behind a console. So really thinking about all of those different avenues is important.
It is important to know what kind of career paths you can pursue. And it's really interesting to think about how the path of WHAM started out in City College. I am understanding that your founder, Terry Winston, was teaching there and started a club for female students. And it's grown in the past 18 years. So I guess, what do you think some of the big milestones have been in your history?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, yeah, Terry Winston is our founder, was a tenured professor. She was the director of sound recording arts at City College. And that's where WHAM was born. And it's really had quite a growth, and we're turning 18 this February 6th. So we're moving into adulthood in this moment, which is very exciting. So in 2005, we moved into our first studio in the Mission, and that was built out entirely by volunteers. And that was our first space that we were in. And since then, we've had a number of milestones I would call out. Certainly, purchasing our current studio in the Mission, in Soma, was a huge accomplishment for us. And we moved into that space in 2015. And then 2017, we opened up our educational space in Oakland. So we've been able to expand. So really having a studio and owning a studio in San Francisco, where we were born, is so important to our story and our mission, and is a foundation for the educational programs that we do and all of the clients that we work with. So that really helps tell the story and how we're rooted in San Francisco.
The clients that you're speaking of, you mentioned middle schoolers and high schoolers in the Girls on the Mic program. I believe that's a free training program, yes? What,
It
what,
is.
what do you hear from them that draws young women and gender nonconforming folk to this program?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely free. So for any young people in the Bay Area, please contact us on our website and get involved. Um, it's a sampler platter of media skills for these young people. And like I said, really thinking about career paths and opening their eyes. But there's been some amazing moments, like when they come into our studio and see the console for the first time. I think a lot of folks get pretty intimidated. I'm intimidated by that space. But in the process of breaking things down and sitting there and starting to touch buttons, they're like, I can do this. I know how to do this. I can run this ship. And that's so exciting, is watching the transformation. And like what I said around coding is um, fundamentally breaking things down so they're not scary and there's a sense of ownership and I can do this. And so the Girls on the Mic classes really focus on all of these skills, like building synthesizers, coding for music, making podcasts, making beats, so that they know that they can follow any of these career paths, and then looking at examples of professionals that they can have as role models.
And speaking of role models, you have a conference. You put one on, and often some of the biggest names that are in sound are women. Can you maybe tell us a bit about how you put these conferences together?
Yeah, so our WHAM cons are a really special part of what WHAM does. And so we generally, when we're on an in-person landscape, we'll move around. So we were in New York and LA and Nashville and Boston are some of the places where we've run WHAM cons. And now this past year and this year, we're doing those virtually, which is really exciting. And as you said, it's an opportunity to bring early career professionals and college students and folks getting into this industry to the table with really big name folks like Emily Lazar or Linda Perry, and getting to the table and learning from these professionals. So we're excited. We'll be doing another one in June, so folks can keep an eye out for that. Great opportunity to connect with folks around the country and globally at this point.
I've heard about a really popular seminar at your WhamCon, and it's the women who produce Prince's sound, the musician, that is par none. But to see that his influence, the reason we identify his sound is because of some sound engineers that he had worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. That panel, if folks can check it out, is 100% worth it. So, there's this series of women that shaped Prince's sound because they were his sound engineers, and the stories they tell, both because Prince, pop icon, everybody loves Prince, I hope. Um, so hearing some of those stories is really special, but then learning that these women, through their engineering, really helped shape the sound in his different eras is so fascinating. And I think really speaks, it goes back to the point. It's like when there's women and gender expansive folks at the table, behind the scenes, at the console, at the mixing board, making decisions, you are shaping sound, you are shaping what we hear, and just the importance of that.
Elena, you briefly gave mention to the virtual nature of life, and it's almost easy to forget it because it's been a year now of sheltering in place. It seems very commonplace, but clearly Wham has had to adapt. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the highs and lows of this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you named it. All of us have made such a massive pivot. And I think Wham did it really gracefully in a lot of ways. This past in 2020, we were able to reach over 4,000 women, girls, and gender expansive folks around the globe. And that was one of the things that really emerged for us, was the possibility of connecting with folks globally. Where before, certainly we're still rooted in San Francisco, and all of our youth programs are San Francisco based, but just the possibility of connecting with folks globally has expanded how we're thinking about our work. So that has been a real blessing from the past year. So expanding our online offerings and our classes. We did a series of Wham Everywhere free classes for folks in 2020. We did all of the Wham cons virtually. We pivoted our internship to be a virtual internship. So our 10 interns are from around the country right now. So that's just been really amazing for us. And so as we think forward to this next year, we're just thinking about how do we keep that up? Right? How do we connect with more folks globally? How do we offer programs to more women and gender expansive folks so that changing the face of sound, is bigger and broader and badder and all those things?
Bigger, broader, badder. I'm intrigued. That's really that's the slogan for your 18th year. Also, I had a question. Sorry, the WhamCon, is it coming up soon? You said June.
Yeah, WhamCon's in June, and our adult ed level 1 class, which is the foundational class that we recommend for folks, is starting on February 15th. I think there's still a handful of seats left, so folks should hop on that. And then the Girls on the Mic programs are available to all Bay Area young people, girls and gender expansive youth, 11 to 18. And you can sign up right on our website.
Right on your website. Elena, again, thank you. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew how to get in touch with you and what was on the menu for the future.
Thank you so much.
With live music venues put on hold and public schools still online, it may really be encouraging to hear that music education is not hibernating. That's thanks to Blue Bear School of Music. And since 1971, they have been a San Francisco treasure. Aspiring musicians of all ages and all abilities have taken group classes and private lessons with Blue Bear. That's some 40,000 students. And to talk about teaching people to play the music they love, joining me today is Blue Bear Executive Director, Dr. Stephen Savage. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us.
Um,
Yeah, so you're not a doctor in medicine. You have a PhD in musicology. And yet there have been some studies that said there are health benefits to music, to playing music. Can you maybe talk about what this means? And I've heard you say before, music is a powerful thing for good.
yes, well, I think most people are really aware of how powerful music is because it's really powerful in most people's lives. And there are a lot of studies about how it helps with cognitive abilities and helps kids with math and in school. And there's a lot of ancillary benefits. But the really central benefit is for the person, the satisfaction, the creative outlet, just the joy of either playing or listening to music or both. Um, there's also a lot of evidence about learning an instrument is really good in terms of forestalling or preventing Alzheimer's. And the benefits really are enormous across the board. But for us, and for me, I guess the primary benefit is just the joy of music.
The joy of music. You yourself are a former drummer, and you told me before about the origin story of Blue Bear Music School, that your band thought it would just help fund your ambitions to be rock stars. And I have a question about the band is broken up, but you're still supporting budding musicians, professional musicians. Can you talk about Blue Bear's mission today?
Yes, sure. Bluebird's mission is very broad, as you mentioned in the intro, and we support all different ages and levels and abilities and all different kinds of programs. We are a nonprofit and we do a lot of outreach in underserved communities. But we also, one of the things that I'm most proud of and enjoy the most as a former professional musician for many years is we hire over 40 teachers, professional musicians, aspiring musicians. Almost all of them play in bands or have other musical outlets, and we provide them with some steady employment and some income that they can depend on. And I know how important that is to them. So that gives me great satisfaction.
That's great, Steve. And let's talk a little bit about rocking out at home. Because of the pandemic, we've all been apart. And I know that your staffers, the teachers, and definitely the students have all been working remotely. Can you talk about how it was to pivot during the pandemic?
Yes, as pivot has become the watchword for everybody in this environment, it was very difficult at the beginning. In the first week after our campus got shut down was crazy, and the staff worked way overtime to figure out how to use Zoom, how to train our teachers to use Zoom, how to get our students oriented towards Zoom. So we really staff did a fantastic job, and we were able to retain most of our programs, many of our students. Unfortunately, of course, all of our ensembles, all of our rock band programs went by the wayside and still are, although we're working on the ability to jam online and we're getting close to being able to do that. But it was and continues to be a sea change for us. And in a lot of ways, I'm incredibly grateful for how well it has worked and how much we have been able to retain and how much music we're still able to give out to the students. We've gotten involved with the San Francisco Unified School District and helping the programs in the classroom, in the schools, trying to just keep music alive at all levels and in all different ways.
Let's stay with that sea change that you're talking about. That may have had impacts on your student population, on your revenue. Can you get us a little bit under the hood and kind of understand where you are after 50 years?
Sure. Yes, it's a struggle for arts nonprofits. And again, I'm grateful that we've been able to do as well as we have, but we are at about 60% of our normal revenue, which is a challenge. But we have had some of our funders have really stepped up. A couple of the funders have come in with what they call solidarity funding and just helping with survival. So we're in pretty decent shape financially, which is really remarkable and a tribute to our staff and to our funders. And the future, though, is uncertain, as is everybody's future in the current environment. But we're pretty healthy considering, and it is a challenge.
You know, I get accused of being a Pollyanna all the time, but I have to ask, are there any silver linings maybe in this moment?
Yes, of course, there are some. For us, it is that we've had to really figure out how to deliver programming digitally, and we've added some new programs. As everybody knows, there's certain things that you can do digitally that you can't do in person. And we're doing these asynchronous classes where you can start the class anytime and do it at your own pace and work through it. That's an online phenomenon. So, and those things, once we get back to in person and get our programs back, some of these digital programs will continue and expand what we're able to do. And that would be the silver lining for us.
You started in a little storefront in the Excelsior about 50 years ago, and now your headquarters are the Fort Mason Center, where a lot of arts nonprofits are based. And I'm really curious, if you were to give some advice to your former selves or to any budding arts nonprofit right now who wants to start up, what would you say to yourself or them?
Um, I'm not sure exactly what I would say, but I guess you have to model. You would have to model whatever it is you're doing to the current environment, which means providing services digitally. One thing I will say, and as a as a service to our wonderful landlords at Fort Mason Center, which is the Fort Mason Foundation, there's a lot of space. There have been vacancies, unfortunately, not surprisingly. So there is space at Fort Mason Center for nonprofits, especially nonprofits, arts organizations, but any nonprofit. And if you're out there looking for space or having problems because of the space you're in or getting started, I definitely recommend that you contact the folks at Fort Mason Center.
That is a really valuable tip. You've been based there for a few decades now.
41 years. We were 8 or 9 years old when we first moved out there. We were one of the very first tenants out there.
And as one of the granddaddy arts organizations, I'm sure you've heard maybe the mayor, Mayor Breed, has really been joining other mayors to push the new administration, the Biden administration, to do more funding in the arts.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, what do you think the future of art in San Francisco is going to look like?
Boy, I hate to try to predict. The 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 impetus to create art and to have an artistic element in one's life, and most of the students at Blue Bear are amateurs and working, doing music along with their regular job or whatever. That's not going anywhere, and the services are going to need to be provided. So, and I applaud London Breed, and I think the new federal administration is going to be much more sympathetic to the arts, and it's a tough environment right now, and to some sense it always has been. I think I mentioned when we talked previously, it's become more difficult for us to attract teachers because musicians are having more trouble living in San Francisco, more difficulty. So there's always a lot to be done, and new things to be done and new initiatives. And I work with a bunch of other organizations and sister organizations to us, Community Music Center. We are good friends with, and we are all in this together. So we try to support each other and continue to get more services, more availability, more funding to the arts. Never stops.
It never stops. That is one thing the arts nonprofit and artist, the mantra. The mention of what type of support that you need. You mentioned that always looking for music teachers. What could people watching today maybe do to help Blue Bear?
Well, come and take music lessons. That would be the biggest help. We always need new students. We are always interested in teachers, music teachers that might be interested. We keep resumes on file, and in the world of music, where people go on tour and lives change, there's not a lot of turnover, and we do have a lot of teachers that have been with us for many, many years. But we're always happy to hear from new teachers, and never know when there might be openings. And then, of course, funding and funders. We have our annual Feed the Bear campaign. So we're always looking for anybody who's in a position and interested in who's who resonates with our mission to help us feed the bear and keep us alive.
You know, Steve, just as a final question, I have always thought if you're a fan of something that you had some talent for it with latent within yourself. I know some people can be intimidated about taking music lessons. How do you get someone over the hump?
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's something that's real and unfortunate. And we get quite a few of the students we get are students that come and say something like, when I was a kid and I was at a birthday party and I was singing, somebody turned to me and said, stop singing. And I thought I couldn't sing, or I tried to play. For whatever reasons, people get it in their head that they're too old or whatever. But the reality is, like you say, really, talent is love. Everybody can play music. Everybody can sing, and you just need to make something of a commitment to it. And of course, our philosophy is that everybody should have music in their lives, and everybody should be playing music, and it's just so enriching. And there really are no barriers. You can be 70 years old and start, and you may think, oh, I'm tone deaf, but nobody is tone deaf.
That sounds like a lovely place to leave it. Talent is love. And Dr. Stephen Savage, thank you so much for being here for the Blue Bear School of Music. And it's really been lovely.
Thank you, Kelly. I really enjoyed talking to you.